Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hey Newberry Fishing. The time has finally arrived. It is the worst time of the year to be bass fishing. If you wait till late summer to fish every year, I don't know what's wrong with you. It's not the best time of year to fish. It is the time of year every single time that I finally have to break out my spinning rods. Unless I'm smallmouth fishing, there is almost no other time of year that you will see me going around with a spinning rod, throwing light line with little baits. And generally, if I'm going up smallmouth fishing, if I can avoid throwing light line with the Ned rigs and stuff like that, I'm not going to. I'm going to throw something else. But always late July, August is the time of year, especially down here in Southern Illinois, southern states, stuff like that, that you kind of got to. There's other things you can do sometimes, but just as a general rule, if you're going to compete in tournaments and do well consistently, you're going to have to break out a spinning rod, or you're going to have to throw some stuff on that you should be throwing on a spinning rod on something else. So I'm going to go over some of the baits and techniques that I use in the summertime, why we use them, and just how you can consistently keep catching them in the dog days of summer when it's hot, no wind, stuff like that. So most of the time when you're fishing offshore, you're going to be targeting brush piles, shell beds, rocky areas, rock points, stuff like that. And as it gets hot, calm, and there's those fish hold on those summer areas, and this is the time of year where it's not fall where they're roaming as much. A lot of times in summer, sometimes you can catch them schooling this time of year, but a lot of times those bigger fish aren't going to be the ones that are out there schooling. A lot of times the tournament winners are those ones that are hanging out on brush piles, that live on those rocky points. They just have that home, but they see a ton of baits. They want to move in slower and slower and slower. And what I mean by moving slower is not necessarily taking a heavy jig and not moving it across the bottom. It's more of a lighter, slower fall rate where you're almost fishing them weightless, but you need just enough weight to get them down there. So what I like to go with are pretty much main two baits, fishing areas and stuff like this. Sometimes I'll go with a lighter jig, but a lot of times that's not going to get those fish to bite. Sometimes they just get shy of everything, and you got to fish pretty much a straight worm on either a shaky head or a drop shot. The two things that I use, which again I drop shot weights I play by ear. I've talked about this in other videos. Half the time I'm fishing a drop shot could hardly tell you what weight is even on there. A lot of times I will put a drop shot weight on, and if it feels too heavy, or I might just throw like a heavier one on, and I'll just take my pliers, I use lead ones, and I'll just snip half of it off or snip like a quarter of it off until it feels right. I don't care what weight it is. I just need it to, if I'm fishing a 10-foot deep brush pile and I roll up to it and I've got a heavier weight on, I'll just snip part of my drop shot weight off real quick. I'm not gonna, they're like a couple dollars for like 15 of them. So if I'm fishing shallow brush that day, I might be fishing a drop shot weight that I have no idea how much it weighs. I just snipped half of it off already. But a lot of times I will start out with like a quarter ounce or something like that, maybe heavier, maybe lighter. It doesn't really matter. It totally depends on what I'm feeling that day. So generally I would say start out with a smaller weight. You're not going to be throwing like a half-ounce drop shot weight. This is the one I got on. It is not cut off, I believe. No, it's not. But this is generally the like 3/16 to a quarter ounce is what I like to start out with when I'm fishing brush piles with a drop shot in the summer. And the shaky head, actually, I was using the other day, is an 1/8 ounce. Sometimes I'll go a little bit higher than that. Sometimes I'll go a little bit lower. Kind of just fish around with it, and it totally depends on how deep of a brush pile I'm fishing and how windy it is. If it's dead calm, I will go as light as possible because I don't have to worry about my line blowing around or anything. I want it to slowly sink down into the brush pile and just kind of hang in front of them. And you can watch them nowadays. Used to, I feel like you had to do more of the, and you still do if it's a thick brush pile that you can't see really well in. But with live scope nowadays, especially when you're fishing for those individual fish around brush piles, if you can see them and it's calm, you can watch them, watch how they react to it. Throw something heavy that's quick in there, and then throw something really, really light. Half the time, light stuff, they won't even let it get to the bottom. Heavy stuff, sometimes you might see them spook and then wrap right back around to it, or you can see them slowly follow it down. And I've noticed that with lighter shaky heads, lighter drop shots and stuff like that, that are more apt to bite it when it reaches the bottom with a lighter bait than they are with a heavier one. Do I know why? Absolutely not. I have no idea why that triggers them better in this late summertime. I think truthfully, it's just that they're more sluggish and they aren't trying to expel as much energy. But for whatever reason, this time of year, that is a big thing that is almost and it's something that I knew already, but I hadn't ever actually got to watch them do it on live scope. If you have fished, late summer patterns and stuff like that, you've noticed that probably that downsizing, sorry, bugs flying around, that downsizing and lighter things seem to work more and more when those fish are more pressured and not as apt to bite. But live scope is definitely one of those things that will teach you in real time how fish are reacting and what triggers them more. So pretty much this time of year, I'm throwing them on spinning rod setups because I would rather be farther back from the brush piles. Because they're getting a better look at it. If the water's clean, I like to fish it on a little bit lighter line. Now, I'm not one of those guys that's going to go out there and fish these baits on 6-pound line or 8-pound line even. Around here, at least, there's no need to. I never drop below 10. I will generally just throw them on 10 because that's already what I've got on my rods. If it's a little dirtier, I'll upsize my line as much as possible because I'm generally throwing them around brush piles and maybe rocky points, stuff like that. There's cover there, especially around brush piles where those big fish can get hung up, and you need to have them pretty much have a big enough size line that you can let them run around in the brush pile for a bit and not break you off. But there's those options where you're fishing a light drop shot, light shaky head, they're getting a really good look at it, and those fish have been fished for multiple times. When you're fishing these brush piles this time of year, like I said earlier, these fish have seen this stuff 100 times over. If you're just hearing about this stuff, there's tons of guys that literally fish only these things late summertime whenever these fish are acting this way. I like to go out, obviously, when I'm fun fishing, throw crankbaits, everything like that, and see what I can get them to bite. But when it comes down to tournament time, you got to go with what is going to win tournaments. And a lot of the time, this is what wins tournaments. As the year progresses on, September and stuff like that rolls around and those fish start getting more active, you can start doing other stuff. But late July, August, my rule of thumb is it's got to be smaller, it's got to be lighter, and a straight tail worm is pretty much the deal. Throw it in a brush pile, let it sit there. Half your bites will be when the thing's sitting still. It won't even be when you're shaking around or anything. But thanks for watching the video, guys. Hope this helps you with your summer bites, and see you on the next video.